Welcome back to Black News Tonight. Last night, we reported the passing of Melvin Van Peebles at the age of 89. The legendary director, actor, writer, and composer was a game changer for independent and black cinemas. Long considered the godfather of modern black cinema, Melvin Van Peebles' cult classic Sweetback's Baadasssss song, produced exactly 50 years ago, is credited with sparking the Blaxploitation genre. He also had an artistically fruitful relationship with his son, filmmaker and actor Mario Van Peebles. Here is what he had to say in the wake of his father's passing.
He'd stopped breathing, and as I looked closer, the look on his face did not look like a man who was afraid of death. It looked like a man who had gone his way in his time. Growing up with him, I saw a life well lived, fully lived. And I think the real tragedy might be not doing what you came here to do in this lifetime. And Melvin Van Peebles, man, your dad, he came and he did his thing. And he would say to all of you, keep on keeping on.
Powerful words. Joining me now is Akil Houston. He is Associate Professor of Culture and Media Studies at the Department of African American Studies at Ohio University. Welcome to the show, my brother. Our younger audiences might not have heard of Melvin Van Peebles. Can you give us a sense and put into context just how significant he was?
Absolutely. It's truly a loss for black cultural production in general, even outside of film. This man is, in the truest sense, a Renaissance man. Being a writer, being a playwright, director, actor, producer, executive producer, sometimes fundraiser, and just all around Mr. Everything. And so his film, as we saw earlier, Sweetback's Baadasssss song, was a game changer. And we kind of use the word game changer, innovator quite frequently, but he really does. He embodies the phrase, find a way or make one. This was at a time when Hollywood was not open to black directors. In fact, he, Gordon Parks, and Ossie Davis were among the first black directors, and he had an in-your-face, unapologetic style in terms of his writing and his directing, and he often challenged the status quo. So we think we're in an interesting moment now with a number of black cultural productions on streaming services, on regular TV, pay TV, but this is someone who did all of that when there was no social media, when there were no outlets, and he essentially blazed a trail so that others could follow. So he is truly legendary, and the creative community is definitely mourning for this giant in the field.
What are some images of black existence that Melvin helped to show, to spotlight, and maybe even to pioneer?
Absolutely, absolutely. You know, when he comes on the scene, there's not a lot happening in black film. You have Sidney Poitier, who's like the major box office draw. But one of the challenges toward the end of the 1960s, leading into the 70s, is audiences wanted something that they felt was real. They didn't want the stand-up, nice, well-mannered black guy who you could invite over for dinner. They wanted somebody who could speak to the streets. They wanted somebody to represent how they were feeling and could really capture the essence of the energy on the streets at that time. We're talking after the assassinations of Dr. King, of Malcolm X, Medgar Evers, the Kennedy brothers. And so people wanted something they could feel, quoting En Vogue a little bit. So I think what happens, Van Peebles brings this energy to his characters. He represents the working class. He represents conversations, excuse me, that people are having in barbershops and on street corners, and he brings it to the screen for the first time. He's not making nice, well-mannered films. He's showing life in all of its beautiful ugliness. And in some ways, he's like a blues filmmaker, just giving it to you raw and uncut, and allowing those emotions that had been held back for so long by many creatives to just flow on the screen. And he was unapologetic all the way through.
You know, when I think about who he was as a filmmaker against the backdrop of some of these other figures that you mentioned, like say, or actors that you mentioned, like say a Sidney Poitier, I think about the relationship between like Motown artists and say like Stax Records artists, right? You know, and when I think about, would it be fair to say then that Melvin Van Peebles in some ways represented the kind of raw, not I don't want to say less polished because I'm not speaking about his skill set, but a more raw, unvarnished sort of representation of black life than what we would see in a Portier or at the time of Cosby or some of the other sort of people who are much more poised for mainstream consumption?
Absolutely. What he does on screen is just give life to the realness. So, I think Stax and Motown is an excellent comparison. Both are representations of black cultural production. Both capture feelings, moods, and sentiments of the time. But there's something about that rawness, the realness, that a lot of people felt that they could relate to. In fact, his first film was met with a lot of controversy because of some of the sexuality that was present in the film. And while many people sort of balked at that representation, the Black Panther Party endorsed it and made it mandatory viewing. So from the gate, he's challenging conventions. In fact, at one of the first independent black film conferences, he says, people are not reading these treaties on revolution. They're watching films. They're listening to music. And if you want to tap into the consciousness of the sister or the brother on the street, you have to speak their language. Sweetback does that. And so I think we see that energy in all of his films. Even the film Watermelon Man was met with some controversy because he changed the ending of the film. The studio wanted a picture where the main character finds out one day that he's black. And so the end of the film is supposed to be him becoming white and realizing that this was a nightmare. Van Peebles said, I lost that version, and there's no nightmare in being black. And so the film has a completely different ending. So one of the current themes or contemporary themes that we can look back on his films then is this notion that I am going to represent how I feel unfettered. In fact, the closing scene of Sweetback talks about a brother coming back to collect some dues. So, he is just that, I would say, blues energy on screen. Before hip hop becomes hip hop, the cultural force that it is today, he is engaging that irreverent kind of in-your-face projection through his work. So absolutely representing for those aspects of the street, those elements of black culture that were not always pretty, but were necessary to critique, to show. Van Peebles from La Permission, his first film, Story of a 3-Day Pass, all the way up through Sweetback, Don't Play Us Cheap, Bellyful, and his other productions, was just a phenomenal talent and someone who constantly pushed throughout all of his work, constantly pushing and breaking boundaries.
I got about 30 seconds left. As I mentioned on the top of this conversation, there was also a very productive father-son relationship between Melvin Van Peebles and his son Mario. How was that reflected in film?
It's interesting. If you follow his career through film with his children, Megan and Mario are in Sweetback. Her role is a little smaller, but you can see early on that Mario is going to be a filmmaker. And so one of the interesting things that I've always been fascinated by is when Mario wanted to make a film about his father, which later became Baadasssss, he said, listen, man, tell my story, but don't make me too soft. So you see Melvin and Mario have this interesting relationship that spills out in their work on screen. And you see it through various cameos in Mario's production. And it's really a powerful metaphor for what happens when father and son work together and can kind of continue this tradition of black cultural production. So if you're a fan of the son, you see a lot of references to his father's work. In a number of films, there are a couple of cameos.
Yeah, absolutely, man. Such incredible insight from you, Akil. And honestly, it is not an overstatement. It's not hyperbolic to say that we lost a giant when Melvin Van Peebles passed away, that we lost one of the most important cultural workers, one of the most important artists, one of the most important filmmakers of the 20th century, and certainly one of our treasures. And it's so incredibly gratifying in this moment of deep sadness to have your brilliant insights on why he mattered, how he mattered, and quite frankly, how he'll continue to matter through not just his son, but through all the filmmakers, all the artists who draw from his rich legacy. Akil, thank you so much for joining me on Black News tonight.